Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about inspiring fathers to teach values that become the blueprint for the next generation. We also talk about motivation, exploration, and experiences. We talk about a lot of things on this podcast, but right now we're focused on fathers because we're fathers. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a father of four. Ethan's a father of four. He's got the one girl between us both.
Yep.
And today we're talking about something, an attribute that's called attribute of foresight. And by way of introduction, I'm Jared.
And I'm Ethan. And as Jared said, foresight is an interesting attribute that can be implemented into your creed, I think. I think everyone wishes that they had a crystal ball, right? But I think I think foresight is a little more active. I think it's a little bit more of an active attribute than just looking into a crystal ball. But it's going to be an interesting one. We're going to kind of go through and see how we can apply it to our personal creeds. So let's do it.
All right, let's dive in.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day.
You should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it.
No retreat, no surrender.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of!
There is no tomorrow! There is no tomorrow!
What we do in life, that goes in eternity.
So, foresight. One of the interesting things that I found that I thought was a really cool kind of meaning of a word was that, did you know that the word provide, comes from two Latin words that mean to look before or ahead?
Really?
So as we provide for our families as fathers,
Which you should be doing.
yeah, or I guess women can provide as well, but
Well, no, I mean, I'm just like, I guess as a parent.
yes,
Right?
as a parent you provide. There's foresight involved with that. And so this is a very important attribute for fathers who want to provide for their families.
Yeah. I think that's great. Have the foresight to prepare.
Yeah.
So foresight kind of, and I always like to just look at just the straight up definition of a word, refers to the ability to anticipate or predict future events, trends, and developments based on a thoughtful and strategic analysis of current conditions. Very, very cool. Foresight, I think, goes beyond just kind of like a simple prediction, and it dives deeper into understanding, all of the factors that shape the future and that could cause things to go one direction or the other. The ability to prepare for a range of possibilities is included in foresight. So it kind of brings it back to that prepare that you were saying.
Yeah. It's interesting I think one thing that's you talked about is like our ability to judge data, to correctly judge what might happen in the future. It's interesting now that we live in a situation where the data or the story that you could be hearing could be totally different.
Oh, yeah.
You could be on, I feel like every time I ever check the Drudge Report, you ever check Drudge Report?
No.
So it's like a news aggregation site. Every time I've ever checked the Drudge Report, I feel like the world is ending tomorrow. It's like, Iran sends nuclear tests into the Gulf with targets in America. It's like every single time it's like this like apocalyptic headlines. Even within our own country, there's two different narratives of what the truth is, or what you have Fox News and CNN, and depending on which one you listen to, the world could be absolutely falling to pieces, or everything could be hunky dory. No, everything's fine at the border. The border's secure. So it's like in one situation you've got the Department of Homeland Security, or no, it's the
Border control.
Well, it wasn't the border. What was the guy that they tried to impeach?
It was a Homeland Defense or something?
Something. I forgot what exactly it was. But it was like it was like Homeland Defense, basically. the Department. I think it was the Department of Defense. No. Maybe Homeland Security or something like that. But they're like, "Is the border secure?" And he's like, "Oh, the border's secure." And everybody in the border control and everybody else is like, "It's absolutely not. 7 million immigrants have crossed over the border in the past, since Biden took office." So, what reality are you living in? That can also warp what you think that foresight is. If every single video you see on all your social media is Bitcoin's hitting the roof, Bitcoin's going to the moon,
That Dogecoin.
hodl, and you're like, oh man, I gotta buy Bitcoin. So that's actually an interesting concept because we live in a reality now where social media will feed you whatever it is that they think that will keep you hooked, and then you might get the perception that your reality is different than it actually is, and that could affect your foresight. So when thinking about how you can have foresight, I would say having the ability to discern fake news, first of all, is critically important, but also having an objective view to what's going on. When I hear, someone from the government saying anything, I'm taking that with a grain of salt. When I hear a company saying something, oh, this is the news sponsored by Pfizer, it's like I'm taking that with a grain of salt. Regardless of whether it's Fox or CNN or whoever. If my neighbor tells me something, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about that. So you have to think, what are the intentions and motives behind people? That's something I've been trying to teach my kids is like, if they're trying to create a reality for you so that then you will react. The reality they want to create is COVID is incredibly scary. Everybody needs to lock down. It came from a bat in Wuhan.
Somebody ate a bat.
Somebody ate a bat, and this is the most deadly thing. All the children need to not go to school. They create this reality, and you believe it, and then they're like, okay, here's a solution to that. And so you're like, oh, okay, thank you for providing that solution for me.
Did you know that there's been like 50 break-ins in this neighborhood?
Yeah.
Did you also know that I started a security system business?
Yeah. Lucky for you, I'm here on your doorstep today. So, like, creating a false reality so that people want to have foresight. People want to see what's coming, and they want to prepare for that. That's why any insurance salesman, almost any insurance salesman you ever talk to, life insurance salesman, they'll be like, don't you care about your family? What if you were to die? And yes, that's true. But that's a shady tactic. I think that's a shady tactic because they're like pushing against the wall, and they're like, "Well, don't you want to have foresight when you die in a horrible car accident, you and your wife, and then your kids are on the street begging for food?"
That's what one guy did to Dad when he was trying to sell him a timeshare.
Oh yeah,
he went to one of those timeshare things, and Dad was like, "No, this doesn't seem right for us right now, or whatever." And the guy goes, "Don't you love your family? Don't you think your family deserves a vacation? Is this not something you think you want to provide your wife? She doesn't work hard enough?" And he was like, "Dude, I'm out."
Killing me. Yeah, those guys are scam artists, man. But yeah, so it's like that's the MO of someone who wants to manipulate you to get something to do, because people want to have foresight. People want to see what's coming. Oh, in some ways, I think it can be healthy. A hurricane is coming. This is a Category 5, and it's going to blast your neighborhood into a bajillion pieces. You should evacuate. And it's like, oh, I'm going to have the foresight, and I'm going to listen to this voice, and I'm going to leave, But if someone's saying, like, hey, the apocalypse is going to happen tomorrow, sell all of your assets and to pull your kids out of school and pull them and bunker down and get into your doomsday bunker under your house. And what was that movie? What's that movie with the guy Christopher Walken?
It wasn't Brendan Fraser in that.
Brendan Fraser, and they go under.
Yeah, and they're like underground for like 30 years or something like that, and then he comes out because they need food. And he comes out to like.
Because the world, it's like the 1990s.
Yeah, he like comes out to this world and he like doesn't know what's because he was a baby whenever they went down into the bunker.
Yeah,
because they didn't have any communication with the outside world. Didn't know that it didn't end.
Yeah, my wife's gonna be mad at me for not remembering that one. Yeah, it's a great movie, but that's the same thing. So it's like people want to have foresight, but when you are but you have to pay attention to that environment that you think that you are in. And if you can get a good grasp on what the actual environment is, then the foresight will come.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I want to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit and kind of name some, maybe some types of people, or maybe some like careers or situations where, I guess maybe it's like every situation, right, where foresight is utilized a lot.
Okay.
I know in like, like data science, right? You use foresight all the time.
Yeah.
Right. You do,
like data forecasting. And
yeah,
like
but
that.
some kind of predictive analytics or something like that. I think like entrepreneurs, they potentially have to have a lot of foresight to see what the market is doing for their specific business. I think also not only people that are current business owners, but I think sometimes people that are wanting to start a business need to have foresight to be able to see a problem and have a solution.
Yeah,
Create a business around the solution.
Prison systems. They have to have foresight many years ahead of time to see what the prison demand is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, do we build
school systems?
Do we build to our current capacity, or do we build
to a future capacity?
Yeah, for sure. Preppers, we kind of talked a little about that. Preppers kind of have foresight. I think let's see, healthcare professionals. I think when you do kind of, I think there's a reason why some health insurance or most health insurance companies, say like preventive healthcare is like covered. Right, because they see that if they try to keep a person healthy, then they have the foresight of, well, then they won't have as many health expenses in the future, which that they would have to help pay for. Not that they do much anyway, but
you think about also companies like wine, whiskey, bourbon, where they have to age things for cheese, cheese industry. The Tabasco, they age Tabasco. These things where you're aging something in a barrel for year, 2, 3, 4 years, and you're trying to plan out demand for that far in the future. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting. I saw this video the other day, and it was like this family, they bought a whiskey, like they bought a barrel full of whiskey from this brewery company. And once a year, they have like a family whiskey tasting where they go and they like taste their barrel. Like they pull their barrel off the shelf and they taste their barrel. And it's still got like, they bought it like the year it was barreled, and it's not gonna be done for like 15 years. But they go in like once a year and do this, like, they just pop the cork and they taste it and then they reseal it or whatever. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Huh.
But yeah, I mean, that's good.
Where would you store that? Just store it in your garage?
No. It's at the company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. It stays at the brewery, and they go to the brewery, and it's like professionally like uncorked. It's not like they're just like drilling holes in the top.
They just drill a hole. They get all the shavings in there, and they just dip a ladle in there, and they cover it with tinfoil.
Yeah. I think technology companies, there's a lot of foresight there. People that are, innovators, inventors, there's a lot of foresight when it comes to that. Scientists and researchers, financial planners, analysts, people that do that. Another one that was kind of interesting was, I mean, governments obviously have to kind of strategize and have some foresight on what the effect. I don't think they always do this super well, but like, what is the effect of what we're doing right now?
I don't think they think
they think of it at all. How is all this stimulus and shutting down the economy gonna affect the next generation in 20 years, 15 years?
Yeah, how is
5 years?
How is Social Security rating Social Security so that it's basically broke?
Yeah, how is pulling money, robbing Peter to pay Paul, pulling money from Social Security when,
Yeah, I mean, maybe in some ways, like with like the Fed, but the Fed isn't the government. The Fed is a privately owned company.
Or maybe they're just like, we'll just print more money later.
I mean, that's what they've been doing. Just print more money, dude. Just take out more bonds.
Yeah. Did you have any quotes for this one?
Yeah, I did.
So I'll let you share your quote first, and then I had two little quotes I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Well, before is it okay if I share one thing?
Yeah, sure.
So
I had a couple other things too, but we.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. We can go back. Let's see. My quote was by this someone we've quoted before, old Theo Roosevelt. He was named after Theo Vaughn, I think. I'm just kidding. Anyway,
I'm pretty sure they're related.
He says, the one characteristic more essential than any other is foresight. It should be the growing nation with the future which takes the long look ahead. So I like what he says. It's that essential characteristic, that foresight. And for a growing nation, if the growing nation wants to be successful, it needs to have that long look ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Generations.
Well, yeah. So, I think I've heard a saying one time. This is a second quote, maybe, but this is from not verbatim. That's like a good society is, a society is good, or when men grow trees, when old men plant trees, they will never see the shade of.
Yeah.
And I feel like many people right now, I mean, on social media, and I think there's this feel like the boomers did us wrong, and they just gouged the country for all the money and all it was worth, and they
didn't plant any seeds behind it
with like an urban hellscape of McDonald's and Taco Bells.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
So I think that's an interesting argument. I think that in some ways, there was their heyday, but now the housing market's an absolute shambles.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can't even get housing because the rates were so low for so long. It's just a gluttonous period,
Yeah. So I had two quotes. The first one, I don't know either. Well, the second one, it was kind of like an unknown. But the first one is some guy named Rashid Orgunaru. I don't know.
Rashida Tlaib?
No, definitely not. So the first one is kind of weird. I don't know. It says how you look at it is pretty much how you'll see it.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like how a man thinketh, so is he, kind of quote, mm-hmm. Right? What you focus on is what will be the outcome. I was actually recently watching Joe Rogan. Shout out to Joe Rogan, just kind of like us,
He's shouted us out so many times that we've just got to shout him out.
Normal dude trying to make a living doing a podcast. And he had this lady on his podcast, and they were talking about kind of depression and therapies and all this different kind of stuff. And one of the things that this lady she was saying, it wasn't. Well, admittedly, I didn't hear the entire thing. Okay, so because his podcast was like 3 hours long. So, but the part that I saw, she wasn't saying all the stuff's bad, but she was saying people that a lot of times they suffer with depression or with mental issues, and then what they do is they get stuck in this cycle of, okay, now they're going to counseling or going to therapy 3 times a week. And it's almost like, so they go to these, hour and a half long session of therapy, and they just talk about their problems, and they just constantly talk and talk and talk, and their whole lives revolve around their problems. And it's like what you focus on is just going to be, is going to be what you focus on.
Yeah.
And then it almost becomes a part of you. Oh, I'm so messed up. I have all these problems, blah, 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 blah. And then it just kind of becomes your persona. And not to say that there isn't, chemical imbalances and different things that need to be addressed when it comes to that. But she offered some solutions, and some of the solutions were, exercise, getting out and putting yourself outside of your normal comfort zone through exercise or through something else is something that kind of distracts your mind and changes your thinking to focus on something else. So that was one quote. The other quote I really liked, that said, one can have only as much preparation as he has foresight. So you can, how I thought of that was, if you, let's say, there's a big storm coming, and they say, oh, the storm's going to have tons of wind, right? And it's going to have tons and tons of wind. So you go and you board up all your windows and you do all this different kind of stuff, and you prepare for a high wind event. You go and you tape your, you tie your trampoline down, or you do all this sort of kind of stuff to prepare for wind, and then it floods, right? you're like, shoot, I should have prepared more sandbags than I did boarding up the windows.
Yeah.
Right? Or I should have prepared differently. If I would have had better foresight, then I would have been able to better prepare.
Yeah.
And so one can only have as much preparation as he has foresight.
Yeah, I think that, it's absolutely true. Like right now I'm trying to save for these kids' college. I've opened up 4 different 529 plans, and I'm dumping money into each of them every month to try to save for these kids' college. And, if I'm just like, oh, it's just tuition, then maybe, but if I'm thinking, okay, I want to help them pay for tuition, books, housing, all this kind of stuff, that changes my plan, And so as I think more about what they will need in the future, it changes what the plan is. It's like, okay, well, maybe I need to be putting more than $50 a month in these things. Maybe I need to put in $300 a month each and on these 529 plans each month. And so, well, I mean, it's always a function of what you can afford. But I think that the principle is that, like, as you begin to think about things further, it's like, okay, COVID. What if a hurricane is coming? Every single time a hurricane has ever come, the grocery stores get wiped out of milk and bread and all these essentials. Like, how can I prepare ahead of time to have the food that I need and water that I need for an electrical outage scenario? And kind of think through that. A lot of times, we kind of did that right when COVID hit, right before it got really bad, and the grocery stores got wiped out. My wife went to like Costco and got like a huge haul of stuff.
Toilet paper.
Yeah, one of the things, but just like a big variety of things. So we didn't have to go to the grocery store for a long while. This was like in March of 2020, and actually, yeah. I went to New York in March of 2020. I was in New York in March of 2020.
I remember that.
I remember because I went, and I got in and I recognized one of the senior leaders, and I went and shook his hand just to say, hey, good morning. But then like we both went back to our desks and like put cleaner on our hands, like alcohol on our hands. It was just starting to turn. When I got back, it was like 2 weeks. It was like a week later, and the whole thing was just shut down. Everybody's working from home. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Anyway, that's the foresight,
Yeah, for sure.
I had a few more things.
Yeah, let's go with your story.
I had so one of the things about foresight is kind of this law of the harvest. For those that haven't heard of it, there's this in Galatians in the Bible in chapter 6, it talks about this something called the law of the harvest. And it says, be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And then in verse 8 it says, for he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And then also, Paul later in 2 Corinthians, or as Donald Trump would say, 2 Corinthians 9:6.
That sounds like somebody who hasn't read the Bible very much. But
he says, he who sows sparingly shall reap also sparingly. He who sows bountifully shall also reap bountifully. So I like this. I mean, this concept is not unique to Christianity. You could, in fact, I was talking to my son, and he's like, that sounds a lot like karma. I'm like, that's exactly what it is. The things that you put out into this world, the seeds that you're sowing, you can later reap. Those will come back to you. That's I think it's just being good out into the world, and also doing. I think that it comes into foresight as well, because if you are doing good things now and you are planning for the future, then you can harvest those later on. If I'm like, hey, a hurricane's coming, I'm gonna get my house ready. I'm gonna board up my windows. I'm gonna get sandbags. I'm gonna go stuff. When the storm comes, you're able to reap the benefits of that because your windows aren't getting blown out, your house isn't getting flooded, and so it's that law of the harvest. The work that you put in now will blossom later, and you can reap that benefit. So that's a kind of a concept within many different religions, but obviously articulated here in the Bible, but very central to the human experience is to have that foresight.
Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, yeah, you reap what you sow. That can be, figurative or literal, I guess. Kind of lastly, a couple things just from a parent's perspective of applying this to your family and your family's creed or your personal creed is why is this important to parenting? I think it's important to parenting because it really enables parents to make informed decisions. We're not only in charge of our lives, but we're in charge of our children's lives as well. It creates helps us to anticipate challenges, create supportive environment where the kids not only can have well-being and be protected, but also develop and learn. So foresight as a parent, some of the things are, preparing for the future. I think that's maybe let's just say preparing for the present and the future, right? Well, I guess technically everything is the future, right?
You can't prepare for the present because the present's happening right now.
Yeah, I guess the present's the past, and then the current present is now the future. So let's just say prepare for the future.
Yeah. You can't prepare for the present. You would have already had done that in the past.
Whether that's, what's for dinner tonight, or whether that's, college for kids, or whether that's, me maintaining a job so that I can help support my family. Educational choices. What are we teaching our kids? What are we allowing them to be exposed to? Can have huge can have huge impacts on their future. Just cultivating life skills is something that, from a foresight perspective, what are we teaching our kids that they might be able to do? Are we teaching them life skills like being able to, fix things around the house, or to be self-sufficient, or to be money savvy, or whatever other life skills that might come with it. Health, well-being, financial planning. What was interesting? Crisis preparedness.
Yeah.
How we kind of talked about storms and weather and things like that, or pandemic. But I think it's even goes maybe deeper than that. Maybe just like a personal, internal crisis. Like, how do we prepare and how do we have foresight into the future of our kids? One thing that I see is like social media, right? How much of an impact has social media had on our lives, right? I feel like it maybe had a less of an impact on our parents' lives, right? Maybe something else had an impact, but social media has been a major portion of our lives growing up. And how is that going to impact our children?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that giving kids opportunities to have foresight. Hey, if you're talking to my kids, if you ride down that hill on that scooter, on that Razor scooter, with no shoes on,
barefoot,
and you put your foot against that brake, what do you think is going to happen to your foot when that thing heats up? When that friction, that's a 101 lesson in
thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics there. You burn the crap out of your foot so it's like, what do you think is going to happen? Oh yeah, so trying to get these kids to think one step ahead. That's actually why I think jiu-jitsu is a great thing, because you're trying to get someone to think ahead. Chess is another one.
Anticipate
Anticipate that person's moves. If I do this and I make this move, and then I can move here, then I can get to this position, and I can get this submission. So it's a great way. There's tons of ways to do that. With money, finances, like, hey, let's save up for something. Save up for that cool Lego set, or the cool new bike, or the hoverboard, or whatever it is, or the Rubik's Cube. There's so many opportunities to teach foresight in a micro way for your kids.
Yeah. So how can you apply that to your personal creed and your family's creed? I think you can apply that by talking about the future with your kids.
Yeah.
Let them know. A lot of times I think it's hard for kids to see. I think it's hard for adults to see too, but hard to anticipate to see the future.
Yeah.
Anything from, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's fine if it changes, right? But what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what do you think, what are some goals for this year? Or, have them think 3 or 4 steps ahead in the future and receive experiences for that. So we suggest that you do that. We encourage you to do it. And something I'll definitely be talking with my kids about. I like sharing these words with them, and just number one, it increases their vocabulary, but also it gives us an opportunity to talk about some things. Yeah. And I put all this effort into preparing, so why not share it with the kids? Yeah. But so we invite you to add foresight to your own personal creed. Think about the future and involve your kids too. And so we invite you to build your creed with us, and let's develop it together.
Let's do it.